differently. So true.
Yeah.
Here you go. Let me get this for you.
Yeah. I mean, how long did people know about Bill Cosby before that started to get into the mainstream news?
Well, I knew it um, before most of your audience was born because I was a 17-year-old working at the SDC recording studio in New York City. And we inherited a huge account from BBDNO.
Hmm.
And that account was Cello.
Oh boy.
Cello.
And
And
yeah,
I am one of thousands that witnessed the violence, the ferocity, and nothing. I kept my mouth shut for 39 years because I gave my word. And one night while resting, I looked over at the television, and there was one of the people that had sworn me to secrecy and asked that I never reveal her secret.
Oh
And
boy.
I never did. And I thought, heck, if she's on CNN, then I guess I can talk about it. And I went and I did an interview with radio, internet in China.
and it's like people knew this for years. And I mean, I'm assuming that like, what did you know? What did you know about Bill Cosby before you worked? I mean, was he somewhat of a celebrity before you? I mean, I'm
Oh,
assuming he was some.
he was a huge celebrity, and he was heavily protected by NBC. He was a rainmaker. He made he made a lot of money for these networks, and they weren't going to let him go. He was like a black pope.
Yeah.
Whatever he said went. He got away. He had tremendous power. It was amazing the amount of power he had. It really was.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and there's what the sad thing is that there are people that actually that believe he was innocent and they defend him.
It's heartbreaking. It's the same as people taking sides in this situation now. It's very, very difficult. Very difficult.
You know what angers me sometimes even more. There are people who say, "Well, I know he did this, but look at what he did like for the black community." You know what? That's not a point. That you know what? That's because any other person who said, "Look what he did for the white community," or "Look what he did," that's you know what? I just think that's a bad argument
It is a very bad argument. Absolutely.
because you're taking away of the tremendous pain and hurt that person caused a lot of people.
And in those days, you couldn't question anything about him. You couldn't question it. You couldn't mention his name. You couldn't say a word. And he would try to get people fired. He tried to get what's that young woman, Wendy Williams, who's got a show, and her husband and she got divorced because he had a baby with someone. Wendy Williams, she was on radio during those days, and he was angry at her and tried to get her fired. And little did I know that I'd come into my office one day, and he was on the phone with my boss, upset because I wouldn't do his bidding and follow his instructions, and was asking them to fire me too. And my boss was smart enough to get down to the details, and I was able to prove. And that's something that I keep teaching everyone I know. Don't talk about anything unless you have the proof in your hand. In your hand.
Nice.
There's nothing that I've ever spoken to either of you about on this show or any show unless I have the documentation in my hand. It saves a lot of grief. And then if they want to argue with the factual documentation, then they can do that.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it was years before. I mean, but basically, the only people that I remember talking about it were people like I remember reading in a few throwaway papers uh, that he, like that he was accused of this, and it was only after the pound cake story and a comedian, I forget his name. It's coming to me, Hannibal Burrs, or
Right.
yeah, I think I know his first name is Hannibal,
Yeah, Hannibal
and
Buress.
yeah, and he mentioned about Bill Cosby, and that's I don't know why that was the reason that it took off.
Because so many hundreds had been injured by him in that same way. And remember that for every person that was injured, there were many more who were witnesses.
Yeah.
And that's one of the points I made at the time when attorneys came to Florida to interview me about that case from 40 years ago.
And if we're getting to this point, that was the time of social media, and if social media, like today, if they're censoring it now, would it be able to be out as easy as it was back then? Because it was him, Hannibal, that put that out there, and it went all over social media. But now they're pushing only reliable sources. Would Cosby and his abuse still have gone on without?
He would have qualified as a reliable source. Yes, he would. Because that young man, remember there were two Coreys?
Yeah.
And one of them committed suicide.
Yes.
And the other one said, and it's, again, this is on YouTube. Don't take my word for it. You can go find it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Corey was on the Barbara Walters show and said, those men are still in position today. The same men are still in power today. And she said to him, how dare you? Not only are you defaming and you slandering the reputation of a person, but you're ruining an entire industry. She wouldn't accept it. She wouldn't believe him. And she excoriated him on the panel in front of everyone on national TV. And she was wrong. He was right. Because soon then the others came out. All of these men with tremendous power, who were they friends with? Oprah Winfrey, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a time, like I said, when Hannibal did what he did, it was all over social media, and now that they're censoring it, I don't think that information about Bill Cosby would be getting out as quick, because the reliable sources, he was protected by the mainstream media protected Cosby until social media.
He spoke the way he spoke on that interview where he said, I want you to scuttlebutt this. He spoke that way 40, 50 years ago when I remember he used to talk like that and get people to completely remove. I mean, I remember him coming into the studio waiting for everyone to have left so that he could edit work that didn't even belong to him because he didn't like the way a particular commercial ran or how a certain actress read her, her piece. He wanted to control everything and everyone, even work that was none of his business, that had nothing to do with the reason he was there. And he got away with all sorts of stuff like that.
And like I said, it wasn't until social media took off, and it was the so-called unreliable, what they consider to be non-reliable sources, that put that information out there, and the news media had to answer. Now that, and I'm saying this today, now that they're saying only reliable sources, will things like this be able to hit the mainstream? Because now they're back to protecting their own, because, hey, the reliable sources. We're only pushing reliable sources. We're not, and he was protected by the mainstream for a long time until social media put that out there.
I
And
mean,
it was,
you should question a lot of things. Don't you question why it is that Weinstein was accused, and he wasn't held in any kind of jail or any type of restriction. He had no restrictions whatsoever. But the one who would have talked maybe as a bargaining chip, that knew everything and everyone, because he dedicated himself to seeing if he could accumulate information, negative information on people, and he would tell those girls, I want to have something on him. And a lot of the people that he had something on, everyone was kind of relieved when he turned up dead in the Manhattan jail.
but like I said, these people were taken down by sources that were not mainstream, and this happened because of social media. This was a good because of social media, and now they're trying to rein in social media. And like I said, I don't know if these stories about the Weinsteins and about Cosby can no longer be told because they're only going with reliable sources, the so-called reliable and big media. And big media protected Cosby. They protected the Weinsteins.
When I was, as I said, I was a 17-year-old, and I remember that after they wanted to establish where he was, where he wasn't, obviously, but they wanted to show that he was someplace else, they would have a young associate from one of the law firms that represented him walk through our studio, not talk to anyone directly, but speaking as they went through the studio so that everyone could hear them. Do you know what I mean? Walking up and speaking aloud in the hallway and saying things like, don't forget, if any one of you want to be a hero, just remember you can be charged as an accessory after the fact. I remember that. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, not only did the person commit a crime, assaulting someone, now they're saying that they could, come after us too.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, this is, and now it seems like they're making it so they're able to protect the rich and powerful again. That's what it feels like to me. And with that being said, is there anything to add? Because I don't want to make the show go too long, because we'll have more information later on as time develops, and
the most interesting thing that came out of all of this is that you had people like Moonves. Think of it. And the fella from PBS, Mr. Reliable.
Oh yeah.
Don Lemon.
No, I can't even remember his name. He was the Southern. God, I can't even remember his name.
He did PBS, and he was like an elder statesman of press. He was very noble and very and he wasn't doing anything different than any of the others.
Yeah, I remember that gentleman, and like I said, that was all social media that did that, and it was all kind of not, and it was not the mainstream sources that were getting this information. It was the non-mainstream sources, and then the mainstream sources were piggybacking on it.
It was unfortunate. It was just so sad. Now, about the political process and the fighting back and forth, it's impossible to even have a dinner and listen to the news anymore. I enjoyed having dinner and watching the day's news. I don't anymore. The fighting, and now it's acceptable to lie and make a huge accusation if you can get it into a soundbite. It doesn't have to be true. Oh my God. I see it again and again. I thought it would be like a sarcastic joke, or people who had, how would I say, who had become cynical, but know. I'm seeing regular, normal people saying things like, you don't have to, counselors, people that are counseling politicians. It doesn't have to be true, you idiot. You just have to get it